Hi, this is the video for Daf Shevui, Masechet Ketubot Daf Yod Zayin, page 17. There are a lot of interesting things on this page, especially in the beginning of the page, a lot of interesting traditions about marriage, about what comes priorities, what comes first, taking care of the dead, marriage, Talmud Torah. But I wanted to talk about another legal principle because, after all, this is what's known as Shas Katan, the little Shas, where there are a lot of fascinating legal principles that come up derech agav throughout the entire Masechet. And one of these principles is chazakah, the idea of presumptive ownership. Now, I want to explain exactly how chazakah works. It comes up in Masechet Bava Batra as well, in the Mishnah there, so you can review it there. The idea of chazakah is not, as some people like to think, squatters' rights. The idea is not that somebody can come and squat on a piece of property and thereby attain ownership over that property. The idea is that if somebody is using a piece of property, we can, under certain circumstances, assume that he acquired that property or that he owned that property because nobody else protested. So it would work like this. Let's say Reuven, we'll use Reuven and Shimon. Let's say Reuven is sitting on a piece of property and he's eating on it, he's harvesting it, he's using it in some way that only an owner would use such a piece of property. And Shimon comes along and Shimon says, that is my property. Now Reuven, if he has been on that property for 3 years, he can, well, actually, let me go back a second. Shimon comes and says, that's my property, and I can demonstrate in some way that I at least once owned that property, either through witnesses or maybe through general knowledge of that, or maybe even through a deed on that property. He comes and says to Reuven, what are you doing on my property? I owned that property, and you never acquired it from me. Now, Reuven cannot just say, Shimon, you abandoned your property, and therefore it's mine. What Reuven has to respond is, I have been here for long enough, I lost my deed of sale, and therefore, had you wanted to protest, you should have come during the first 3 years that I was here. In other words, Reuven is responding that I own that property through sale or somehow a present or some type of acquisition, but due to the time, I lost my documentation of that. The 3 years of using the property is demonstration that he did acquire it, not that he is using somebody else's property. And the idea is that had Shimon wanted to protest against Reuven for using his own property, for using Shimon's property, Shimon should have come within the first 3 years. That's why, under certain circumstances, we can see that there is no chazakah. For instance, let's say Shimon is abroad during that time. Then there is no chazakah. Let's say Shimon just even lives somewhere further away. We wouldn't expect him to make that protest because he wouldn't have heard about it. Let's say Shimon makes a protest in the second year but doesn't accomplish anything by his protest. Then there is no uninterrupted chazakah, uninterrupted 3 years of presumed ownership. Now, we could go more into the details of when chazakah is effective, when chazakah is not effective, but that is found in the 3rd chapter of Masechet Bava Batra. There's a lot of stuff in the Mishnah about it. You can review Mishnah Yomit, which is on our website, to find out more information about it. But again, I just want to impress on people that there is no such thing as squatting on somebody else's property and thereby attaining ownership over it. It has to, chazakah is a replacement for a lost deed, in a sense, because it's assumed that somebody owns it by living there. It is not assumed that you can actually acquire property that was never yours and you admit was never yours through the act of presumptive ownership.